The Mandalorian Season 3 is only 2 weeks away. To prepare, I thought I would look back to the first 2 seasons and take a moment to celebrate everything that made them great. So here's everything I loved about Season 1 of the series. The very first scene is awesome. I remember being skeptical of it when the series first came out, but returning to the scene now, I just get it. It's the introduction to Din Djarin that we need. He is capable and violent, he doesn't kill for no reason, but he does it without remorse, and the door kill is just awesome. I also really like the original armor design. The solid, unpainted Beskar is great, but I do enjoy the brown and battle-worn armor as well. I love the willingness for the Mandalorian to be weird immediately. In the second scene, we've got 2 aliens and a guy in a helmet, and then one of the aliens summons a droid-driven speeder with a recorder. What? The Brian Posehn cameo is pretty great. I wish he didn't die immediately, but I know he's a big Star Wars fan, and I'm glad he had the chance to do something. The shot of the speeder gliding across the ice is perfectly reminiscent of Luke driving his land speeder on Tatooine in A New Hope. Again with the Star Wars weirdness, a giant space walrus in the opening minutes. I know Andor got some criticism for not having much in the way of aliens or creatures. It was more grounded, and that's totally fine. But man, do I love this flavor of Star Wars too. Anyway, Ravenaks are cool. The Pulse Rifle. I love what it represents for Star Wars. It's a holdover from the holiday special, largely considered to be one of the worst Star Wars things to ever exist. And yet, fans lost their dang minds when Jon Favreau released that image of the Pulse Rifle. We all cheered and pointed like, oh my gosh, it's that thing from that thing we all agree is terrible. And shortly after, we get a direct mention of Life Day. From the very first moments of The Mandalorian, it's like a signal that every Star Wars story was worthy of celebration by Favreau. It was all fair game. The rack of bounties frozen in carbonite is a chilling image, pun intended, but I also like the progression of that technology. It was originally not meant for organics, but if word got around that Boba Fett used it to transport Han Solo, which makes sense because that became very public information in the War of the Bounty Hunters comics, then it stands to reason other bounty hunters might work to improve the technology to make their jobs easier. Because I haven't taken the time to mention it yet, the Razor Crest is a great design for a ship, and I love that at least one of the shots was created by John Knoll using the same basic principles that the original Star Wars films used, moving the camera by the practical ship model. I love having Carl Weathers in Star Wars. He seems like a natural fit to the universe, and I was excited for the casting the second it was announced. I don't know why, but I love calamari flan as currency. The reveal of several dirty-looking stormtroopers is a great bit of visual storytelling. We know it's after the fall of the Empire, but we can see there are still remnants. They're just looking rather rough. No pristine white armor. They're not the power they once were, but they still exist, and that can't be good. Werner Herzog in A Star War is so wonderfully weird. I kinda love that the client still doesn't have a name, but I also want to shout out Herzog for his love and admiration for the Star Wars mythology, as well as his insistence that the Grogu puppet should be used more often than CGI. Speaking of CGI, I remember my jaw hitting the floor when I found out this set was mostly in the volume. Sometimes the stagecraft technology is obvious, but sometimes it can slip right under my nose, and this is one of those cases. The move down into the sewers of Navarro to find more Mandalorians and the Mythosaur skull and the armorer was so cool. I immediately had so many questions, but in a good way. Questions I looked forward to eventually having the answers for. And of course, the armorer is another great and intriguing design. Along the same lines as the holiday special stuff, having the blurgs from the made-for-TV Ewok movies is super fun. And I forgot how much I loved Kuiil. Having an Ugnaught was an interesting choice, and Nick Nolte provides a great voice for him. Fans kind of forgot about saying, "I have spoken." I think we need to bring it back. I love all the misdirections surrounding the bounty, that it's 50 years old, and then Kuiil suggests that many others died trying to capture it, so it must be dangerous. There are never any lies told, but all the truths given suggest it would be anything but a baby. Kuiil calling out Din for failing to ride a blurg when his ancestors rode mythosaurs is a great burn, and also a great call out to existing lore. And it's also something I would love to see pay off in Season 3 of the series or later. I have to point out the riding shots because I specifically remember seeing one of them unfinished at Star Wars Celebration 2019 and thinking it looked rough and being very worried. But then in the final version, I breathed a huge sigh of relief. Also, I think the terrain of Arvala 7 is cool. It looks like if a real-world craggy desert were magnified so people could walk across the surface or down in between the cracks, which are more like canyons at this size. I love Din's bitty little telescope. But it's quickly overshadowed by IG-11, who is amazing. He was revealed in a different shot in the Celebration 2019 footage, and that moment had me cheering. Seeing an IG droid in action like this still puts a giant smile on my face. Seeing the two bounty hunters fighting together is thrilling and also hilarious. Taika Waititi's dry delivery of his lines and insistence on self-destructing multiple times is great. Din commandeering the turret is also awesome. This episode had so many great scenes, and we haven't even hit that moment. I think the realization that the bounty was a baby Yoda will be a Star Wars memory I'll never forget. The shock and wonder and the terror that the IG droid wanted to kill it, and then the final shot of the tiny hand reaching out. Chills, still. I think I was still a little hesitant about live-action Star Wars on television until that moment, and then I was all in. I haven't talked about Ludwig Göransson's score yet, but it was another aspect of the series that I thought was strange in the opening scenes, but then watching the credits with the concept art after the reveal of Grogu just had me pumping my fist. Moving on to Chapter 2, we take it for granted now, but the little pram was so cute when we first saw it following Din around. Seeing the Trandoshans in the shadows and then reflected in Din's helmet before they attacked is awesome. We see vibro weapons throughout the series, so I'll only mention this once, but seeing actual vibro axes and vibro blades is so freaking nerdy and I love it. And then seeing the pulse rifle unleashed as an actual disintegrating weapon, hell yes. I know I already mentioned Werner Herzog and how he insisted on using the Grogu puppet over CGI, and I want to reiterate that that was the right decision. The puppet looks great. Can I tell it's a puppet? Very often. I don't care. It's wonderful. In hindsight, watching Grogu trying so hard to get out of his pram to heal the man that saved him from his captors is so heartwarming. I feel a little bad laughing at Din disintegrating Jawas, but I definitely do laugh, every time. But the violence is kind of the point. That's what Din resorts to, and we can see Grogu picking up on that right away. The chase and then climb up the sandcrawler is hilarious. He hurts his fingies, gets electrocuted, he's having junk thrown down on him, and then that one canister bonks him right in the head. He gets his butt kicked by Jawas. It's so undignified, but that is, again, the point. This line of work is beneath him and Mandalorian kind. It's so fun to see these episodes now, knowing where Din's journey is taking him. Okay, I know I've been talking about Puppet Grogu a lot, but the CGI model is also very good and cute, and his little noises and watching him waddle around and oh my gosh, he just ate a frog, stop it, he is too adorable. The attempts to trade with the Jawas are fun, and I like that again, Din just resolves to violence when things don't go his way immediately. The Jawas all chanting, "Suga! Suga!" apparently the entire way to the Mudhorn's cave, while Din sits there cramped inside the sandcrawler is excellent. It dawns on me that this episode was very necessary as the second one. I was definitely expecting a serialized story with the Mandalorian. Serialized elements are there, but it's also got Adventure of the Week vibes, and I'm glad this episode just spends time being goofy and funny. It helped me set expectations for the rest of the season. Just because this is one of the most clear shots of the Kuiil costume and animatronic, it looks great. And I want to make sure to also shout out Misty Rosas for her portrayal of Kuiil and several other characters throughout the series. The Mudhorn is yet another awesome Star Wars creature design, and also the music in this scene is so wild and different. Again, just like after the Sandcrawler chase, I love the image of the Mandalorian on his back covered in mud, trying to get an egg for the people who robbed him. It's so undignified, it is not the life he was meant for. Little Grogu using the Force for the first time in the series is fantastic. I think I just assumed he would be Force sensitive, but we did need to have it confirmed on screen. The Jawas screaming Suga and chowing down is funny and unsettling. Kuiil is just a great guy, fixing up Din's ship for no gain, and I love him saying he hopes the child survives and brings him a handsome reward. We're meant to be thinking about credits, but I wonder if Kuiil knew Din would gain a greater reward than he ever imagined. In Chapter 3, the Sin, Greef Karga's hologram messages always sound like he's narrating the start of a theme park ride, or he's a video game NPC offering you a side quest, and I find it charmingly cheesy. Grogu stealing the little ball off whatever that lever is on the Razor Crest is adorable. I'm gonna try not to just point out every cute little thing he does, but look at the way his little ears flap in the wind, oh my god! I love the use of the old ice cream maker prop, but to make it just like the galaxy's most inconvenient briefcase. And the detail of Dr. Pershing having the Kaminoan insignia on his uniform is still a nice touch that hasn't been paid off yet, but I can't wait to learn more, either in The Mandalorian or The Bad Batch, or both. I love that the heavy gunner Mandalorian is named Paz Vizsla in the credits and voiced by Jon Favreau, who originally played Pre Vizsla. The first chapter had the Mithril ask about Mandalorians never taking off their helmets, but chapter 3 is the first time we have it confirmed by Mandalorians, and I love that they just let Star Wars fans sit with that question of why all the way until season 2. This is also the first episode where we got to hear "This is the way." The Armorer montage is all around amazing. The music, the flashbacks, seeing a B-2 battle droid. Again, the way this series can wrap up every element and era of Star Wars into one story is great. I love the symbolism of Din's armor. He says it lost its integrity, and it is a mess, so he's given a brand new shiny set, a clean slate, and with it comes a chance for him to reset his own morality, deciding to save the child. And the way he makes that decision by simply seeing the absence of the ball Grogu was playing with, excellent. This show does so much visually. I remember thinking this first season would end with Din deciding he needed to go on a rescue mission for Grogu, and I was so surprised and even excited to be proven wrong. I love that the Gatekeeper droid screams when Din rips it out of the wall. And who doesn't love a good one-man rampage through a building to take down some stormtroopers? I so hope they make a Mando-style video game someday. Using all the Mandalorian gadgets with a stealth element would be so fun. In the context of this episode, I like that we again cut to see Grogu watching all the violence and being affected by it. But still, whistling birds are awesome. I love the shot of all the bounty hunters' tracking fobs going off. We still don't really know how the fobs work, but I just don't care because that was such a cool oh shit moment. The shot of the pulse rifle slowly peeking out from between the boxes is so good. After seeing what it could do in Chapter 2, it's another oh shit moment, but this time for all the enemy bounty hunters. The quiet moment of Din nearly losing hope with Grogu is emotional, even though there's not a human face on screen, and then that rocket flying by overhead. I never ever thought we would see anything like the scene with all the Mandalorians swooping in and saving the day in live-action Star Wars. It almost seems silly to think about how thrilled I was watching it for the first time, knowing what we got in Season 2, and even seeing moments in the trailer for Season 3. The series continues to grow, but even this smaller moment was amazing. And I think this episode was the first time I was like loudly humming along with the theme music, just over the moon with how cool it all was. To build off that, in Chapter 4, Sanctuary, I like that the main theme is played almost like it was written for a Renaissance fair. Grogu flipping switches on and off is, yes, it's adorable, but it's also very funny as he just ignores everything Din says, and continues to do so, following him around on Sorgan. The Loth Cat in the tavern is an excellent touch. I love that the waiter is so innocent she doesn't understand that Din is bribing her for information and just thinks he's a great tipper. The shot of Cara Dune knocking Din into the ground makes me recoil every time. And of course, the bone broth sipping is delightful. I love that Cara and Din call the Imperial Walker an ATST. This series does a lot of nerdy name drops throughout both seasons. The way the ATST is treated visually is probably my favorite aspect of the episode. It might as well be a T-Rex. It's just a giant monster. I like Sorgan as a chance at a peaceful life for Din and Grogu, a place to settle down if Din ever decides he wants that, and I still wonder if they will ever return to the village. I like that Chapter 5, The Gunslinger, opens up with a dogfight. I will always welcome more space action. The approach shots to Mos Eisley being recreations from A New Hope is a nice touch. Same goes for the rest of the city, and I like seeing how it's all changed since the fall of the Empire. I can say that Peli Motto has definitely grown on me. I was not sure about her in our first meeting, but after seeing her more in Season 2, I have come around. I'll always love seeing people speed around Tatooine on speeder bikes. It brings me back to those Shadows of the Empire playing days. The Tuskens in this episode are great, but I love how it opened the door for future expansion in the Book of Boba Fett. I like how little Din cares about Toro when the up-and-comer whines about not having any Beskar to protect himself with. And I like seeing Toro get the snot beat out of him by Fennec. I like that Finnick lays out what the life of a bounty hunter really is. Make the best deal for yourself and survive. That's the life Toro wants, that's the life Din left. Selfishness versus selflessness. Classic Star Wars. Ming-Na Wen is, of course, great in her role, and I'm so glad it didn't wind up being a one-off appearance. And I like that we got that tease of Boba Fett to wonder about for an entire year. In Chapter 6, The Prisoner, I think Mark Boone Jr. is cool as Ranzar Malk. He's another character actor I just liked seeing pop up in Star Wars. The rest of the crew? They're an interesting case. Obviously, I have more love for Mayfeld after Season 2, but at this point, they're all so over the top and edgy to the extreme, but I do think that's the point. They are supposed to show us the kind of people Din used to hang with, and the kind of people who even thought he was a little too violent. Them all being awful also makes the moment where they discover Grogu very tense as they pretend to almost drop him and then really do drop him. I like that the New Republic security droids share some design elements with the Imperial KX droids like K2SO, and Din taking them all down is pretty awesome. Matt Lanter having a live-action role is a nice touch, and I hope that trend continues, especially as more and more animated characters come into live action. The new characters being so terrible all pays off when it comes time for Mando to take them down one by one. That is easily my favorite sequence of the episode, watching him defeat a representation of his past. Especially when he slams those doors closed on Berg. And those strobing shots of Mando sneaking up on Mayfeld, great. Grogu's little hide-and-seek game with Zero is a fun gag, and so is Grogu thinking he somehow used the Force to make the droid's chest explode. The reveal that Din stuck the New Republic tracker on Quinn is so satisfying, and the appearance of X-Wings is fantastic. But how can you not love Dave Filoni, Rick Famuyiwa, and Deborah Chow all playing the pilots? So great. In Chapter 7, The Reckoning, I love that Greef Karga can actually be seen turning off his hologram message. The only thing I would have added is some mumbling of him trying to find the off switch. Grogu checking that the coast is clear before deciding to fly the ship is, as usual, adorable and hilarious. I like the montage of Kuiil rebuilding and reprogramming IG-11. It's funny, but it's also completely relevant to Grogu, who's been watching Din kill the entire season, and then decides it's okay to use the Force to choke Cara Dune when they're arm wrestling. Droids and people are not good or bad in the beginning. Like Kuiil says, they are neutral imprints of those that program or teach them. I love little Grogu healing Greef Karga's wounds and getting all tuckered out, but I also love that Greef thinks he's in danger of being eaten. I like the little detail that the client sits in Greef's spot in the common house, taking over his position. Can I offer you a libation to celebrate the closing of our shared narrative is an amazingly weird line, and I need to start saying it whenever a house party is over and I need people to leave. Also, I would like to see the baby. Every Werner Herzog line is iconic. Moff Gideon's introduction to the series is perfection, the Death Troopers, the drums kicking in as more stormtroopers arrive, and of course the Outland TIE Fighter with the folding wings. Although I always laughed thinking about what it must have looked like for him to scramble down off the top of the cockpit. Giancarlo Esposito's opening speech is also great. He plays the best villains. Kuiil's death is so sad, he was so close to the ship. But I do love the Scout Troopers at the start of Chapter 8, Redemption. I mean, Molly hates them because they smack Grogu in the bag, but I like their banter, and I like both Jason Sudeikis and Adam Pally. The visual gags about their bad aim are a little on the nose, but whatever, I laughed. Just two bored troopers. Plus, they get what they deserve for hitting Grogu. Seeing IG-11 utterly destroy them is completely satisfying. I love the name drop of the E-Web and the fact that Gideon gives a whole dang speech about the thing. And I love that the film production invited several members of the 501st to be in these final episodes. I like seeing the full version of the Clone Wars flashbacks, complete with droid gunships, and of course, Death Watch swooping in to save the day, which I had questions about back when this first aired, but like all the rules about the helmet, it's slowly being explained in a satisfying manner. Of course, that also means we now know we're watching Din being rescued from a battle and taken into a cult, but it's still a cool moment. Grogu having the time of his life while IG-11 absolutely wrecks stormtroopers throughout Navarro is fantastic. And then Din joining the fray? I remember that shot from the trailers where he exits the door, blasters blazing, and I already thought it was badass. But then he rips the E-Web off the mount and goes nuts. The whole battle is so much fun. Grogu's little hero shot and him using the Force to save the day from the Flame Trooper is emotional, and it's also a good way to remove his powers so they can't heal Din's injuries. I love IG-11 proving that he is no longer a hunter, but a healer, that his programming and nature can be changed, which is exactly the kind of thing Din needs to see as he changes his own nature. Din getting his signet and becoming a clan of two with Grogu is nice, and I was so psyched to see him finally getting a jetpack. I thought for sure the armorer was going to be killed off screen, like we would just hear blasters fire off in the distance. This series leans into a lot of cliches, and I don't mean that in a bad way, because it kind of leads you to expect something and then flips the script on you. And the fight itself is awesome. The armorer is badass, and that one trooper getting thrown into the smelter is like something you'd see in a Star Wars video game. I like the weird little whistling fairy droid on the lava river. IG-11 bringing back his self-destruct protocols is perfect. It was a joke in the first episode, and here in the last, it's a poignant moment that even makes Din sad, which by itself is a good moment of growth for him. Greef begging Grogu to do the magic hand thing, getting a wave in return, and then saying he's out of ideas gives me a good laugh every time. I always remember the wave, but then it's the exasperated way Carl Weathers delivers that line that cracks me up. Din taking out Gideon's TIE fighter is so cool, and it's the first moment we get to see Gideon look panicked. I love the mirrored moment of Din flying away with Grogu compared to the time a Mandalorian saved him. Of course, the Darksaber moment was crazy and unexpected. The last place I expected to see it was in the hands of Moff Gideon, and it raised so many questions that again, we don't fully have the answers to, but I have loved its inclusion in the series so far. And that brings us to the end of Season 1. We're still a couple weeks out from the premiere of Season 3, but I've been having a great time revisiting the very first season of live-action Star Wars television. It's crazy how far things have come in just a few years, and how far they will continue to go in 2023 and beyond. I'll be releasing a video on everything I loved in Season 2 of the series next week, so keep an eye out for that. Let me know your favorite moments of Season 1 in the comments, and check out this playlist for other videos in the same series. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, and consider checking out our Patreon page, where we'll be releasing video reactions and audio commentaries for every episode of The Mandalorian Season 3 when it begins airing. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.